How's it going, everybody? This is Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jared Berenstein, and if you got any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat. That is what I am here for, just answering all of your good faith questions about politics. So, if you got any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it, and so this is the space where you can ask all those questions that you might have been scared to ask about, and you didn't want to seem uninformed in front of your friends or your teachers or whatever. This is the place where you can ask what the filibuster is, or reconciliation, or continuing resolution, and things of that nature. Three-fifths majority. How does the filibuster work? Like, all those questions are on the table. I can tell you about what's going on currently in politics. I just think it's important for something. It's important thing for people to know about, and also, we can sometimes treat people who don't know about this stuff like they are uninformed or stupid or something. And I've definitely been treated like that in the past, and I did not care for how that felt. So that is what I'm doing here. I am here to answer all of your good faith questions about politics. I don't care who you voted for. I don't care if you didn't vote at all. I am just that. I don't care. This is not one of those shows where somebody comes on and I yell at them for having different politics than me, or I try to own somebody for not knowing about politics, or watching different news channel than me. I don't care who you voted for. I don't care if you're further to the left than me or further to the right than me. I'm just here to answer all of your good faith questions about politics. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. It can be like trying to learn a new language, because there's all these like words that we just throw around as though everybody knows what they are, like filibuster and continuing resolution, and fucking yeah, just and we were always referring to people by their last name, like Hegseth or Patel or McConnell and stuff like that. And if you don't know who those people are, it can be really difficult to sort of like get on the same page as everybody else. And so this is the place where you can do that. This is the place where you can ask those questions without fear of judgments or roasting or debating. This is not one of those shows where I bring up people who are different than me politically and I just yell at them for having different political opinions. I'm not here to wag my finger at anybody or shame anybody. I'm just here to answer all of your good faith questions about politics. Carmine, good to see you again. Or Centrist the Pineapple on Pizza people. I'm not here to disparage any group of voters, regardless of if they agree with me or not. And I will say that I have had Hawaiian pizza in the past, and while it is not my favorite, it is certainly delightful, especially when you are gardening, shall we say. Sherilyn W. says, what are congressional hearings really for? Nothing ever comes of it. So there are hypothetically, like in a world where normal politics is working, there used to be teeth to congressional hearings. It is illegal to lie to Congress, and so people could potentially go to jail for perjury, and people have. I think Steve Bannon actually went to jail and may potentially still be in jail for lying to Congress. And so that is where the people who have all the information grill you in front of the world, and then the truth has to come out because that is the time when you are, legally required to do that thing. The part of the goal of the Republican Party and the billionaire class has been to weaken the levers of power that the government has that they can levy against, businesses and things like that. And part of that has been weakening congressional hearings. They are still a very valuable tool where we do get a lot of very important information out to the American people that way. But it is true that because, very people with a lot of power have decided that they don't mean as much as they used to. Now they don't mean as much as they used to. Because a lot of government is just an agreement that we all have together. Like, these people vote, and then the vote means that this thing happens. But if you have, say, like a president who is in control of the military and just decides, like, okay, well, I understand that you voted for that thing, but I decided that that vote doesn't count, and I have the military behind me, then those things don't matter anymore. So it's important that you vote for people who are going to uphold the Constitution, because the reason why our society is being held together is because of these like implicit, implied agreements that we all have with each other. All right, excellent first question, Sherilyn. Thank you very much for being here. Connor says, how many big mouths do you think Trump is eating in his life? I don't know what you mean by big mouths. So like, Big Macs is probably what you mean. I mean, the dude loves McDonald's, Dominic Benevento says thoughts on Ukraine's operation yesterday. Foreign relations, foreign news is kind of like my weakest subject, but I will say that just based on what I've heard about it, it seems kind of cool. Like they, you know, uh, did an operation that decimated a very important sector of the Russian military. And, the way that Ukraine has been able to defend themselves ever since Russia illegally tried to invade them, I think it is the morally right thing to do to support them, as well as the strategically right thing to do to support them. Slick says, will we survive? Yes, if people like me and you do the work, Slick, of trying to fight back against this administration. Hey, Orca, what's going on? I don't have guests on my live. Martha Turner says, what is the benefit of letting Indian people into this country? Is that what you're saying, Indians? Well, I'm not going to specifically say, like, which countries have like which benefits, but I will tell you that immigrants in general are a net positive on our country. When America sits at the top of sort of like the world hegemony, and all the best and brightest from all around the world want to come here. They want to come here and learn. They want to come here and start their businesses. They want to come here and join our research facilities. But when you have somebody in power like Trump, who is isolating us from the world and kicking people out, especially of higher education, we're suffering from brain drain right now. Like the best and brightest don't want to be here in America, and doctors and scientists and are the future doctors and scientists of the world are all choosing to go somewhere else because America is a hostile place to them right now. But yeah, just generally, immigrants are a net positive. Like, it doesn't just have to be the best and brightest. There is food right now that is dying on the vine because farmers can't staff their farms, and we are currently in a downward trend of population. Our population is declining as opposed to increasing. Our birth rate is declining. That's the word I was going for. And so we are going to need immigrants to fill the gaps where our the next generation would have been in the future. All right. Jim for Trump says, what farm? Exactly. Cool, Jim. Your name is Jim for Trump. Like, do you have anything else going on in your life? Never mind. Machiavelli says, what is your stance on immigration laws? I do not like the way that Republicans handle immigration because it is just like it's the most like childish version, the most simplified version of what they think is the solution to the problem. Let's build a wall when most illegal immigration happens through legal points of entry and people just fly over and stuff like that. Let's just separate kids from their families and then they'll be so scared that they won't come here anymore. It's barbaric. It's morally bankrupt what they are doing to people. It's kind of cooked in racism also. Like there is a certain population of the Republican base that they don't care how hard you shit on them so long as you shit on people of color harder. The Democratic Party is trying to solve the problem of immigration, but it's a complicated problem. And so it is made even more complicated by the fact that Republicans will not play ball at all. They just say no to anything that Democrats ever try to do. But trying to address the root causes of immigration, like trying to work with the countries where all these immigrants are coming from to make it so that people don't feel like they have to flee their country. Hiring more immigration judges and asylum judges would really address a lot of the backlog that we have in our system. And sort of clearing out a pathway to citizenship, I think, would be a better option. But yeah, just blanket sweeping no on any brown immigrants it's bad policy for a million reasons, and it's also, like I said, cooked in racism, so it's morally bankrupt. This guy says go Trump, so that's a block. I don't care if you have different opinions than me, but actually ask a question, be part of the conversation. All right. User a whole bunch of numbers says taxpayers should not be paying for this. Taxpayers aren't paying for this. User a whole bunch of numbers. Immigrants pay more into taxes than they get out in government benefits. So they are a net positive on our economy. Amy Tutton says, what do you think about MAHA? I mean, it's dumb. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is not going to make us healthy. He doesn't give a shit about science. He's going off of conspiracy theories. He's having AI write his reports, which are referencing non-existent studies. we are already seeing the effect of what he is doing with this fucking massive measles outbreak. There's a tuberculosis outbreak. There's a fucking E. coli and salmonella outbreak happening. We are not working with other nations. We are not doing the preventative work of keeping diseases out of our country. Yeah, it's just fucking. What did I see on TikTok today? Okay, that'll be health policy. And he even admitted it in that hearing. He was like, people shouldn't be taking health advice from me. And I was like, way ahead of you, buddy. Nick says, why does the left play a high horse and put people down, then wonder why they lose elections? Nick, I don't know if that's a real thing because, I think that there are people on the internet who like to play high horse and put people down, but I don't know if those are real people. I do a lot of work with other people on the left. I do a lot of canvassing, so I talk to a lot of voters, both left and right, and I never meet anybody who is like that. And if you know anything about like information warfare, like the kind that Russia and the billionaire class has been waging on us for a really long time, it's easy to connect the dots between people on the left acting shittily on the internet and billionaires paying people to do that so that people don't want to vote for people on the left because they don't like being talked to that way. But you're never going to see that here on this channel. Like that's not the kind of person that I am. User a bunch of numbers says American involvement in other countries has to stop. I mean, I understand if you don't want there to be like American interventionism, like forcing regime change and shit like that. But we are a global community in the sense that there are planes constantly going to and fro all the different countries. Our economies are all intimately linked together. So what happens in every other country affects every other country. So we do need to be involved on some level. Being completely isolationist is not a good strategy for having a healthy and prosperous country going forward. Bookieman says, you mean legacy media, the ones who are really waging war? No, that's not accurate, but also legacy media is owned by billionaires, so you're also kind of making my point for me. Whole bunch of emojis says, do you think ICE is going after people of color? Yeah, I mean, yes, without question they are. They are arresting people who disagree with them. They are arresting people who look like they are potentially here illegally, which what does that mean to them? It just means brown people, like ICE is a rogue agency. They need to be dismantled because what they are doing is blatantly illegal. And if you are curious about specifics about that, Chris Murphy gave a great speech during a congressional hearing outlining all the ways that ICE has been acting illegally, unconstitutionally, unmorally. Insert your negative adjective here. Adjective? Adverb? Immorally? Immorally, acting immorally. Yeah, that'd be an adverb then. All right, Bookieman says, yeah, you're wrong. You don't know your facts. Yes, I do, Bookieman, and if you don't ask a question, I'm going to boot you. I don't care if you disagree with me, but just ask a question. Be part of the conversation. Let's see here. Lyle Peterson says, how come no one talks about Democrats' problems? I do talk about Democrats' problems. Lots of people talk about Democrats' problems. Everybody talks about Democrats' problems. The issue, though, is, number one, Democrats aren't in charge right now, so there's nothing to talk about. And number two, the things that Democrats do wrong and bad is so much less wrong and bad than what Republicans do wrong and bad that it just seems silly to bring it up. Like if there's somebody stabbing you in the throat, why am I going to yell at the kids that are reading magazines in my store? It feels like a difference of scale is important to consider here. Vivian XXXX says, what do you think the speech by the Indian American student at MIT? I didn't see it, unfortunately, Vivian. Apologies for that. Bess says, I'm a teen. When should I start learning and caring about politics? I mean, I think as soon as possible. Best, I think that what I would want to communicate to you is that you should treat everything that you see on the internet with a massive grain of salt. You cannot trust just anybody that is spouting information about politics, myself included. Like, double check everything that I'm telling you. But I think that a part of the issue that we're having in this country is that people just sort of like get their political information based on vibes on the internet. And vibes on the internet are extremely easy to manipulate if you have a lot of money, like the billionaire class does. And the billionaire class works with the Republican Party to try to get them elected. So, I'm going to throw a lot of shade at people like Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro. But if you're watching people like me or Hassan or Destiny or any of the other, or that other dude, what's his name, Dean, take everything they say with a grain of salt also. But I think that if you do a little bit of fact checking, you'll recognize that the left-leaning talking heads are generally more accurate than the right-leaning talking heads. Comrade BB says billionaires aren't a class. All right, I don't know what you are trying to accomplish by saying that, Comrade BB. Dan Blackwood says, also, it's okay to disagree with your parents' politics. Yeah, that is another good point, my teenage friend. Badger75 says, does Chrisley know best? He knows best how to do tax fraud and then bribe Trump into commuting his sentence. It goes viral on X. She called Israel genocide. Yeah, I'm not one of those people that is going to insist that what Israel is doing is a genocide because the ICC didn't find it to be a genocide. They found it to be war crimes. And war crimes, in my opinion, is bad enough for us to not continue to support the right-wing government of Israel led by Benjamin Netanyahu. So yeah, I think that a lot of times people get bogged down in sort of like semantics and when you demand that you call something a genocide when 90% of the world is ready to agree with you that it's a war crime instead, it seems a little bit, unproductive, But I agree. I agree that what Israel is doing is wrong. It is a war crime. Ollie says, thoughts on lack of gun restriction. It is entirely the fault of the Republican Party, and that is the reason why we have such insanely high gun deaths in this country constantly, and mass shootings and stuff like that. Comrade BB says, math ethnic cleansing of tens of thousands of people is what? I don't know, Comrade BB, but also I don't know why are you trying to fight me, my man? Like, I'm just here answering questions. Dominic Benevento says, do you think America would benefit if it went socialist? Checks would increase by like 80%. Dominic, so, communism, socialism, capitalism, they can all exist in the same country. They don't have to be one thing or the other. There is communism and socialism here in America already. Any company that is employee owned is communist, and anything that we use tax dollars to pay for that benefits that benefits everybody, like fire departments and public schools and paved roads and shit like that, is socialist. Now, every other country that has universal health care, for example, is more socialist than America, and ergo, I think America needs to be a little bit more socialist and a little bit more communist. I think we need to unprivatize certain industries like healthcare, and I think that we should be giving incentives to companies to be employee-owned, stuff like that. Garfield says, Jarrett, you are 98% right. I'll take it, Garfield. I think I'm 100% right, but I am willing to acquiesce to the potential 2%. Banda Boss says, what is your opinion on the open border policy under the Biden-Harris administration? There was no open border policy under the Biden-Harris administration. 98% is pretty good. I agree with that. Comrade BB says, no, that is not what communism or socialism is. Comrade BB, I don't think that you're here in good faith. I think you're just here to throw shade and spread misinformation and try to be one of those fake lefties who creates division within the party and creates a bad impression of what a lefty is. But feel free to prove me wrong, my man. Socialism is the dictatorial consolidation of power over the productive forces by the working class. That certainly is a definition, Comrade BB, but is not the definition. Sean says, do you think it's convenient that they're releasing the Epstein video now that AI is good enough? I haven't heard anything about them releasing an Epstein video, but also we have to take everything that we see on the internet with a massive grain of salt because AI has gotten very, very, very good. Vivian XXX says, what do you think about the Uyghurs? Is that a genocide? Why? I'm unfamiliar with the ICC's ruling on that. I am unfamiliar with the UN's ruling on that, so I can't speak on that. But if you're trying to catch me oh, that's a genocide, but this isn't a genocide, I'm just here to not fight, guys. Regardless of if it's a genocide or not a genocide, what they're doing is wrong, and we should not be supporting them. I don't know what the value is of arguing the semantic difference between those two things. All right. Lyle Peterson says the issue with American politics is that it gets involved with media outlets here in South Africa. News outlets are not allowed to push any political agenda and are required to be fair. I like that. Let's see here. Yeah, Lyle Peterson, you're correct. It is a massive issue that our corporate-owned media has both a profit motive and a political motive, depending on which agency you're talking about. And I would love for there to be some regulation around that. I don't know what regulation we could have that would not potentially be weaponized by bad faith actors, people like Donald Trump. But I'm down for it, M. Barrera says, do you have mods here? I normally do, but, sometimes they are not here. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Sean says, who do you think is the least attractive member of Donald Trump's cabinet? I mean, you're asking me to decide between which which is the most fun version of chemo. You know, like that is a real fucking close game. I do think it's weird that people like Bongino and Patel are like telling their conspiracy theory fans that Epstein killed himself, like shit like that. And it also seems like they're much more interested in like hanging out and going to Vegas than actually doing anything shitty. But that can always change on a dime. So yeah, I'm not really yeah, I don't love any of them if I'm being real. Dan Blackford, you got me again, man. Jay, how do you feel about abortion, and are you a Republican or a Democrat? I'm a Democrat. I My feelings about abortion are that women should have the right to bodily autonomy, and that there are ways that people who do not think that abortion should be legal, and people like myself, can have a policy that works together. The issue that I have is with the Republican Party forcing their perspective on everybody else, saying, no, 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 you can't have any abortions at all, regardless if it will save a woman's life or save her fertility, or in the sense of rape and incest. They're not trying to stop unplanned pregnancies. They're not trying to make it so that women who are pregnant feel safer to have a baby by increasing the minimum wage and giving them free childcare and maternity leave and stuff like that. All they are doing is increasing accidental pregnancy and then forcing women to have those babies even at risk of their own personal safety and fertility. That is not a productive way of handling abortion policy. And I think that people on the right who do not want there to be abortion, I think it would serve them well to recognize that the Republican Party is not going after their best interests on this issue. Being extremists on abortion by banning it everywhere against the will of the people, against health experts' recommendations, is not productive. And so, if you are somebody who does not like abortion and you want to work on actual policy to stop abortion, family planning, access to contraceptives, increasing the minimum wage, strengthening the social safety nets, maternity leave, paternity leave, that stuff actually does decrease the number of abortions. But making it illegal does not. It just makes it less safe for women. Aron Russell says, what are your thoughts on the new task force against anti-Christian bias, or more generally the separation between church and state? Ron, that is blatantly Christian nationalism. There's no version that the right wing of this country, be it elected Republicans or the Supreme Court, where they're actually arguing for religious liberty. They're arguing for Christian supremacy. And that is all it is. And if they call it something else like anti-Christian discrimination task force or anything, it's basically just like their version. They're just trying to like soften it up with a different name, but that's all it is. Any law that they pass that is supposedly for religious liberty, they get challenged by a protest group like the Satanic Church to be like, okay, well, what about us? Can we do that? And then they have to like write in 5 different amendments to what the thing. It has to be a religion where there's a Christ, and et cetera, et cetera. All right, going back over to the TikTok comments, says, why would I ask an unknown comedian about politics? Because I know a lot about it, Joey, but you don't have to be here. Nobody's forcing you. Jay says, do you think abortion keeps the population balanced? To me, that is, if it does, it's immaterial. Like maybe that's helping on the margins. Maybe, if we're worried about population rising uncontrollably, maybe a little bit, but I think that where population growth and decline are concerned, it's a much larger problem. Adam Conover just did an excellent episode of his podcast about this very topic, where countries put billions of dollars into trying to increase their birth rates, and it has almost zero effect. And people that study this stuff are also completely not in agreement on what causes population declines versus growths and shit like that. And our understanding of it is a little short-sighted and myopic. If you're just one of those people that like me, I originally thought that the baby boom happened because everybody was rich after World War II, but that actually doesn't really bear out in any of the data. But yeah, also I'm kind of going off on a bunch of tangents here. I need to get back into these comments. MJ says, why is population decline bad? So MJ, population decline isn't bad inherently, but the country that we are currently living in, our economy is based on a growth model. for example, Social Security requires there to be more young people paying into it than old people taking money out of it. And if we suddenly have a population decline, then you're going to have a group of old people who will no longer have Social Security available to them because there weren't enough young people paying into it. Now, that's a problem of balance. Like that problem can be fixed if we adjust certain, key factors in our economy and our economic systems. But the fact of the matter is that we don't have that right now, and we need time to make those changes. And if we have these massive gaps in generations, then really bad things can happen. But if we move, and a lot of economists have already started talking about this, if we move to a more sustainability model as opposed to a growth model, then having population decline isn't going to be a bad thing necessarily. And it's a great way to reduce things like climate change and resource management and stuff like that. But yeah, the issue is that right now we need the population to be growing at a better rate if we don't want economic decline and businesses to fold and people to be starving and all that bad shit. But yeah, if you want to know more about that, I would just say check out that Adam Conover episode. Bryden says, how does implementing new governments into purchased lands work? Hypothetically, Greenland, for example, new governments into purchased lands work. Oh, so you're talking about like Trump's trying to buy Greenland for America? That's not my area of expertise, unfortunately, Bryden. Thank you for your question, but I'm not really sure. MJ says, why not just adjust the Social Security cap? I mean, there are adjustments that we could make, but everything is kind of a band-aid if you have this massive avalanche of population decline coming down the pike. Alrighty. Banda Boss says, what do you think about the lenient border and immigration in the Democratic Party? So I take issue with your description of it being lenient, Banda Boss. People will often talk about the aggressive deportation that happened under the Biden and Obama administrations. The difference is that the Democratic immigration and border policy is solution-oriented, and Republican border and immigration policy is punishment-oriented. Like, they're just like, let's just beat these people up, rip them from their families, send them to concentration camps in foreign prisons in lands that are ruled by dictators and warlords. For why? Like, because we're trying to scare people into not coming here? Like, it doesn't work, the Trump administration has effectively ended legal immigration for everybody who isn't white or rich. And that just increases illegal immigration and gives more power to the cartels because more people are going to have to go to coyotes to get across the border as opposed to going through their legal channels. And then they just have more people that they can deport, and they're deporting people who are legal residents. ICE has rounded up and detained citizens and veterans, and they are, without any trial or providing any proof or evidence whatsoever, they are sending people to concentration camps in other countries. And that is unconscionable. Like, I will take the Democratic immigration policy over that fucking every day of the week, man. Like, that's us. Like, our country is doing that. And not only is it terrifying because that could literally happen to any single one of us, like, they're not checking your social media feed to see if you are a Trump supporter before they fucking put you on a plane to El Salvador or Libya or some shit. Nobody is safe if they are doing this to people, but also, like, that is a representation of us. We're saying that we voted for that, and every American, regardless of if they are, worried that this is going to happen to them or just worried about the way that we are being viewed by everybody else in the world, everybody should be fighting against this because it is damaging within and without. It is bad for everybody. All right, scrolling down to the bottom of the TikTok comments. American citizens are safe. What do you mean? They're not. Us, Dave. American citizens have been detained by ICE. And there are legal residents, people who are here completely legally, who have done no crimes, who have, without a trial, been shipped to El Salvador and Libya and South Sudan. If that can happen to them, it can happen to you. US Dave, detained is not deported. It's only a matter of time. Trump is already talking about how he wants to do that. to American citizens. US Dave. Did you not hear about that happening? US Dave. Riffs Karaoke says the attempts at suspending habeas corpus should terrify everyone. Completely agree with that. MJ says white American citizens are safe. What do you mean? No, they're not. ICE has already started talking about how they're doing collateral deportation. So if you're standing next to somebody that they're deporting, they could deport you as well. Trevor Mullen says, question, your view on the tariffs? They are dumb. They're being handled dumbly, and they are chaos because they're on, they're off, they're on, they're off. They're being renegotiated. Now they're back on. So businesses don't know where they can invest going forward. Our docks are empty of goods, so we're looking at the potential of empty shelves happening at some point in the future. It is already increasing costs. Walmart is increasing their costs like 45% and shit like that. And since we are already suffering through a cost of living crisis, the place that people go for things to be really reasonably priced, like Walmart, when those prices go up, people suffer. People suffer more. Poor people, working class people, they suffer. Us Dave says, yep, already got liberals being racist to me in here. Typical as fuck. I'm not really sure what you're talking about, us Dave. I haven't said shit. And, you can't really Go Vols says Trump is doing great. And that's an example of the kind of comment that gets you blocked. I don't care if you have different opinions than me, but actually ask a question, be part of the conversation. Lyle Peterson says birth rate decline in Europe is a big problem to the point that they started ramping up their asylum program, which causes other issues. I understand that flooding your country with a bunch of people from another country who potentially don't speak the language or know the customs, yeah, there's going to be some tension there. But again, immigrants are a net positive on any country that they go to. Carman says, oh no, people on the internet are being jerks. Yeah, for real, man. Flying Grit says, what are your opinions on Ukraine? Ukraine is a sovereign nation. They should have the right to exist without fear of being illegally occupied by Russia. And it is both the morally right thing to do and the strategically right thing to do that we support Ukraine by sending them money and weapons. I don't know what Talos is. Gay boy swag. Let's see here. Sean says, why do the Trumpers keep talking about winning when the world is going to shit? Sean, so two things about that. Number one is they think that we're winning because the news that they are watching and the Facebook that they are watching is telling them that we are winning. They're not getting any of the actual information about what's going on in the world. But I also don't love calling people Trumpers. Like, I also don't love calling people maggots or using any pejorative for people that vote on the right, because they are just people that got conned and they got grifted. Some of them are bad people, I'll grant you that. But most people who vote Republican, they just don't know what's actually going on in the world because they are a victim of their information bubble. But again, they're not more gullible than people on the left. There are 8 million people on the left who got tricked into not voting in 2024. So there's no tea, no shade here. Regardless of who you voted for, I am here to engage with you in good faith and try to get you to recognize that the people on the left are not your enemy. The people on the right are not your enemy. Trans kids, immigrants, poor people, they are not your enemy. The enemy is the billionaire class and the Republican Party that is working with them to fuck us all over and turn us into a fucking wage slave class of fucking modern day serfs while they get to eat fucking caviar and lobster 3 meals a day while they're taking their golden private jets to their golden mega mansions while they're not taking helicopters to their golden fucking mega yachts. All right. This guy just calls me a liar. That is an example of a comment that gets you blocked. I don't care if you have different opinions than me, but actually ask a question, be part of the conversation. All right. Riffs Karaoke says, it's bread and circuses for the mob. Completely agreed. J.D. Hendry says, 19% approval rating rant. I don't know what you mean by that. Trevor Mullen says, I feel it's corruption and a big media twist on both parties. So Trevor Mullen, the both parties argument is a little misleading, and it gives cover for the Republican Party. Because when you say both sides, it makes it seem like the people that are doing worse things are equally as bad as the people doing not worse things. But there is a big difference between both like the media twisting things for the Republican Party versus the Democratic Party, the corruption in the Republican Party versus the Democratic Party. It's actually in the platform of the Republican Party to make corruption easier, more legal, harder to trace, shit like that. Whereas the Democratic Party is at least trying to do something about it. And when we have corrupt people in our party, like Senator Menendez, we fucking get rid of that guy and we don't go to bat for them. the way that Trump goes to bat for every fucking corrupt piece of shit that is on his team, and the way that the Republican Congress is not doing anything about the massive amount of corruption that is happening under the Trump administration right now, today. They could be stopping it. They could be doing something about it, but instead they're just crying fake news and doing cover for him. So yeah, this is not a both sides issue. This is a one party is way, 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 way worse than the other party. And the Democratic Party, as flawed as it may be, is still way, 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 way better. Anthony says, best president ever. That is an example of the kind of comment that gets you blocked. I don't care if you have different opinions than me, but actually ask a question, be part of the conversation. Let's see here. Lovely Renee, good to see you as well. Raygon Gordon says, can the mayor of a town have a way to combat ICE with his officers? So that's a really difficult question, Raygon, and I believe it has, yeah, I mean, like the specific laws of legal jurisdictions and stuff like that, like that's not really my strong suit. But there are ways that citizens and cities and states can fight back against ICE by either refusing to, give them information, or refusing to work with them on raids, or, just gumming up the works as best as they can. But yeah, the specific, jurisdictional arguments, like it might even have to do with like, the difference between the law in California versus Illinois, like I'm just not 100% sure. But there are things that, again, people can do. And people like you and me can do. Like, we don't have to sit on our hands and hope that our mayor or our governor can fight against ICE. Like, we can be part of the solution as well. And part of what I'm doing on here is trying to get people to recognize the power that they have and to actually do the work of helping, Jack Self says, coming up the works, the best that they can, spoken like a true, gumming up the works, the best that they can, spoken like a true Democrat. Jack Self, are you trying to be mean to me? Because yeah, gumming up the worst, the best they can, is a good strategy, and it should be what we are doing. Rapster says, spot on, excellent description of the Republican wealthy, greedy, were superior to you. Trevor Mullen says, may I have a reference for the crackdown of corruption on the Democratic side so I can do my research? Yeah. Crackdown on corruption, it's okay. So there are a bunch of little things that the Democratic Party has done to fight corruption. It is way easier for me to tell you the things that the Republican Party has done to make corruption and grifting easier and more legal. But we're talking about like specific bills, and we're talking about, who Biden put in charge of the Federal Trade Commission and stuff like that. Like, that's going to be a little bit harder to get into, Trevor Mullen. But, if you send me a DM or you email me through my website, I promise you I will send you some substantive information. But if you want to know, if you want me to just go off the dome, I am much better. I could way easier give you examples of the Republican Party being the party of corruption and bribery. Jay says, I'm starting the 2028 Fortnite political party. Oh, cool. I don't know what that means, but sounds pretty cool. Just followed you so I can DM. I'm interested. Yeah, Trevor Mullen. I'm really glad to hear that. Joni Calder says, what kind of an effect will the bombing from Ukraine have on the peace talks? I hesitate to make any kind of prediction about that because, Vladimir Putin has done that move himself, like right before peace talk, like doing a bunch of attacks on Ukraine in order to sort of like have more leverage and say like, look how good we're doing in the war. Obviously, we're not going to give up so much. Like, we're obviously going to win this thing. But Putin is also one of those guys that's like, rules for thee and not for me. So he's going to cry foul and say, oh my God, you want peace, but you just blew up all of my bombers. Like, that doesn't seem cool. Like somebody who wants peace, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I don't know. Putin is a liar. He's a bad faith actor. His country is, adversarial to our country, even though our president is currently working with him for some fucking reason. So yeah, I don't know is the short answer. Sean says, are you following the India-Pakistan situation? I don't have the current, up to the minute on that. But it does seem like tensions have kind of mellowed a little bit. I don't know. Yeah. Dan Blackbird says it might make Putin surrender. Really? The damage? You think the damage was that bad, Dan Blackbird? From your lips to God's ears, my man. Alrighty. Let's see here. Joni, I already had that one. Spears. M. The Ambassador says, what are your thoughts on Spears? Can you be more specific? Trevor Mullen, Dan Blackbird has some excellent resources for you to check out. The corruption shit. Menendez, Cuomo, Al Franken, all Democrats that The Democratic Party did not continue to support after they were charged, with whatever it is that they were, charged with. Elijah says, like, not to be a Democrat or a Republican. Elijah, is that like part 2 of a question, my man? Because I don't really know what you mean by that. Grumpy Cat, good to see you again. What's happening to the Qatar plane gift? Is it costing us more to receive than a gift? It is, because in order for it to be quote unquote Air Force One, there are millions, potentially billions of dollars worth of adjustments and retrofitting that is going to need to happen to that plane. And even if it does get done, like, it's not going to be safe for the president to fly around in that, because there could be bugs in there that we just never find. Additionally, that plane is never going to be Air Force One, because that retrofitting is going to take so long that Trump will be out of office potentially, or no longer living by the time it is done. So yeah, the Republican Party is allowing that to happen, even though it is blatantly corruption. Even though it's blatantly bribery. Let's see here. 138A Juan says, opinion on RFK. He is a liar. He is a fraud. He's a piece of shit. He's going to kill us all. Badger75 says, Al Franken was railroaded. I mean, an argument could be made. Let's see here. Puff says, don't get my hopes up. Sean says, it feels like the Russians are in too deep to surrender. Yeah, potentially. All right. Let's see here. For anybody who is just joining us, hello, my name is Jared. I answer questions about politics. I don't yell at people, and I don't fight with people. I am not here to debate you or yell at you and have you come on my live stream and try to own you in front of everybody. I am just here to answer all good faith questions about politics. If you are somebody on the right and you've always wanted to ask somebody on the left, like, why are you guys so evil and shit like that, like, this is a great place to ask those questions, but nicer than that, of course. So yeah, and I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. So that is what I am doing here. You can ask me any question that you like, and there's not going to be any roasting or ridicule or debate. Sometimes I feel like people don't ask questions about politics because they're worried about, oh, if I ask this, is going to think I'm a MAGA person, or I'm a cuck libtard, or they're going to think I'm dumb and didn't do the reading in high school or whatever. And you're not going to get any of that judgment here, regardless. Lucy says, how can POTUS ignore SCOTUS? So the way that our government works with checks and balances is you have to have key people in certain positions to actually enforce the laws that we have on the books. The U.S. Marshals, which is the agency that would carry out the decisions of the judiciary, is under the purview of the Department of Justice, which is currently being run by Pam Bondi. And Pam Bondi is a Trump sycophant. She will do whatever he tells her to do, regardless of what the law is. And so if the person who's in charge of the U.S. Marshals isn't going to send them after the president because of all the illegal shit that he's doing, then we're kind of SOL. And that's why it's so important that you vote for people who believe in upholding the Constitution, regardless of which party is in power or doing the illegal thing. Now, on top of that, the Supreme Court, which is extremely right-wing and basically just carrying water for the Republican Party and has been for a while, they passed a Supreme Court decision that said that presidents are immune from legal prosecution for the things that they do in office, so long as they are, quote unquote, official acts. And who decides what those official acts are? The extremely right-wing Supreme Court. So a Democrat can't do illegal things, because then the Supreme Court would come in and say, well, you're a Democrat, so what you did was illegal. But a Republican president, they could do whatever they want because those are official acts. Additionally, there is a policy at the Department of Justice that sitting presidents can't be indicted. So regardless of whatever Trump does, he is free from legal prosecution while he's in office, after he gets out of office, to a certain extent. Now, there are people in the Trump administration who are not shielded by that Supreme Court decision, and so they could potentially go after them, like Pete Hegseth, or what's her name? Ice Barbie. I forget what her name is. Deportation Barbie, whatever her name is. They could be held in contempt 100%. But again, you would need Pam Bondi to send the U.S. Marshals after her, and she's not going to do that because she's Team Trump. Let's see here. Salazar Lopez says, why do corporations support 801Bs, but not unions? I don't know enough about that to opine on it, Salazar, but just taking that question at face value, I would say that unions threaten their bottom line and H-1B visas don't. That unions make it so that workers have more power, and bringing immigrants over from other countries is a way of getting cheap labor. I'm shooting from the hip there, but that's my off the dome reaction to that question. Master Liberty says, been a while since I have been able to catch your stream. How has your day been? It's good, Master of Liberty. Thank you for being here again. And the tour went great. Thank you for asking. Salazar Lopez says immigration is cheap labor. It 100% is cheap labor. It is the reason why companies will sometimes hire illegal immigrants, is because they will work for less than minimum wage. Lenin A. Campbell says Republicans spit lies even after proven wrong. That is accurate. I always like to clarify that we're talking about Republican talking heads and Republican politicians as opposed to Republican voters, just because I want to make sure that people know that other voters are not your enemy. But people like Ben Shapiro, Charlie Kirk, Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, and elected Republicans like Ted Cruz, Donald Trump, and unelected Republicans in power like the Supreme Court and Elon Musk and shit like that, those people are your enemies. And the billionaire class, of course. Trevor Mullen says, I'm a registered Republican. I'm trying to stay educated. Oh, that's great. Well, I'm really glad that you're here, Trevor Mullen. Please come back time and time again. I'm happy to engage with you, even if we don't align politically. Salazar Lopez says, you think Democrats would be against immigration then, since it's for cheap labor? Salazar Lopez, it's interesting that you would bring that up. It is a complicated issue where our economy and our way of life requires immigrants to come into this country and have a worse life than the rest of us, which does seem unfair because it is unfair. But at the same time, like, if you go hard on immigrants and not, for example, the companies that are hiring those illegal immigrants, that for some reason is much more politically palatable, because they are an other, they are a brown person. But yeah, if you take the Democratic platform, as a singular unit, what we want is to treat immigrants like human beings, to give them rights, to allow them to have a pathway to citizenship, to reward them for being valuable members of society, while at the same time forcing businesses to pay their employees more, regardless of if they are illegal immigrants or immigrants or whatever, raising the minimum wage, increasing benefits for workers and worker protections and things like that. But has that always shaken out that way when Democrats are in charge? Not always. And there's a billion reasons for that. Just a couple I would mention would be like Republican obstructionism, where they're like, we're not going to vote for X unless you give us Y, and the Y is treating immigrants like shit. Or, the more neoliberal swing that the Democratic Party made after the Reagan administration, when we were getting our asses kicked left and right, and the Democrats' solution to it, right or wrong, good or bad, was to be more corporate and billionaire friendly. And, you can argue that it worked because we got Clinton elected, and, he had, I believe, both houses of Congress when he first got elected. But you could also argue that it was bad in the long run because now people have an idea of the Democratic Party being exactly as owned by the billionaire class as the Republican Party is, when even though they did do a swing towards being more business friendly, it is still not even close to how in bed with the billionaire class the Republican Party is. All right, that was a pretty fun one. That was a pretty fun little rant there. Let's see here. Master of Liberty says, some word of advice, though, never read court cases while sick. That's pretty funny. Increases of it, have I already asked what you think of the naturalization process? Master of Liberty, we kind of have gotten into immigration pretty hard already today, so I'm going to dip out of that one, unfortunately. But come back tomorrow. Maybe we can get back into it again. E.G. Petre says, why think gender is a social construct? There are... G. Meyer says, that's such a lie. What do you think is such a lie? And also, don't call me a liar. Ask a question, and I won't boo you. So there are people in this world who have different feelings about their gender and other genders than you and I do. Like, I have never questioned whether or not I was a man, but there are people who were born men who have felt more like they are a woman, and women being born who have felt more like they are a man, to the point where when they go through gender reassignment surgery, they feel better and they do self-harm less. And so based on that information, based on that fact that those people exist and that their lives are better after they transition, the idea has come out that, these ideas about what a man and a woman are are not so easy to boil down to an XX chromosome versus an XY chromosome, or who has boobs, or who has a penis, or who has a vagina. That is why we say that gender is a social construct. But also, like, this is just, I'm kind of shooting from the hip here, because I'm like not a trans person. I'm just saying what I have heard from the trans community, and that all makes sense to me. That all tracks. I don't really understand why people have such a fucking problem with it. That seems very reasonable to me. Boxcar Racer says, how come Project 2025 is no longer a popular fear monger tactic? Well, Boxcar Racer, it was never a fear monger tactic. It was a legitimate fear. We were pointing out a dangerous thing that Republicans and Trump were going to do if they got elected. And we know that they were going to do that because they currently are doing that. Like, Project 2025 is currently happening. And the destruction of our government to the detriment of the 99% is currently happening. There was just a podcast episode, I think it was Chris Hayes' podcast, where they got into this. If you are here in good faith and you want to learn about how Project 2025 actually is happening right now, hit me up and I will recommend you that podcast episode. But if you're just here to, troll, then, we can always just boot you, Trevor Mullen says, what's your view on our military? I'm in the Navy, so I'm just curious. As a person who was never in the military, I don't know really how to answer that question, except like I would love to have a I don't know. It's complicated, Trevor. I got to be honest. I'm at almost an hour of streaming today, and that question is going to take a little bit more out of me than I have in the gas tank right now. But come back tomorrow. Maybe we'll get into it again. Boxcar Racer says, why are the tariffs fear-mongering tactics over? They're not. The tariffs are still happening. And why do you keep on calling them fear-mongering tactics, Boxcar Racer? Do you not think that, the things that we say have any value or validity? Like, do you think that people on the left are just trying to scare people? Do you not think that the Trump administration is doing damaging and harmful and potentially illegal things? Because if you don't think that, I'm happy to get you into it, my man. Project 2025 and tariff fear-mongering tactics are over. What's next? Yeah, Boxcar Racer, you're not engaging with me. You're not a real person. You're just trolling. And so you're like literally this close to getting blocked. Timothy Reed says, what's your thoughts on other tax systems? Henry George's LVT specifically. I don't know about that, unfortunately. Carmine says, that's a bot. Well, that's good enough for me, Carmine. Thank you for your service, my man. Wes Crowder says, nobody believes the BS. Quit watching MSNBC. I actually don't watch NBC, Wes Crowder, so I'm not really sure what your ish is. Oh, land value tax. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, generally speaking, I'm not like a tax expert, but generally speaking, I am for any mechanism by which we can get the billionaire class to pay their fair share. Any mechanism by which we can start actually taxing wealth as opposed to just income, because rich people have figured out a way around income tax. I don't think there should be billionaires, and if that is one of those great tax policies that could potentially take people who have $200 billion down to having $900 million, I'm all for it. John Bradley, Trevor Mullen says, let me ask you a simple question opinion on the Golden Dome. Excellent. So I don't have a theoretical problem with spending a bunch of money to give us a Golden Dome. The issue that I have is that people that like study physics are like, it is fucking impossible to do a Golden Dome over America. We are just too big. So yeah, it seems like kind of bullshit from the Republican administration because, they do a lot of lying and stuff like that. Davin Miller says, who'd you vote for? Democrats up and down the ballot. John Bradley says, when do you think the DNC will go back to trust busting against monopolies like Amazon, Google, etc.? John Bradley, they were doing that during the Biden administration. They had, I forget her name, but she was in charge of the Federal Trade Commission, I think, Lena Khan. She was doing the work, man. And the NLRB under Biden was doing the work of supporting the unions. And finding in favor of the unions, and Biden was walking the picket line, like they were doing the work, and America rewarded them by voting all of the Democrats out of power, and that is entirely the fault of billionaire propaganda, because people did not know what the Democrats were doing, and they had a false idea of what the Democrats were, and they had a false idea of what the Republicans were. Let's see here. Yeah, Trevor Mullen, thanks, and do hit me up, my man. Wes Crowder says, Biden wasn't even the president, LOL. Sure thing, man. Okie dokie. All right, Wes Crowder, congratulations. You're out of here. Alrighty, let's see here. Lena says, what do you think about his gifted jet from Qatar? It is one of the most obvious examples of grifting, corruption, bribery that we have seen in modern times. If you are going to accept a gift from a foreign national or another government, it has to be approved by Congress, and it was not, so it is illegal. User a bunch of numbers says, will Kamala or Newsom be the next Democratic candidates? Well, number one, there's going to be a primary, which will decide that. Number two, I am not focused on 2028. I am focused on 2026. We got to get people activated and organized and engaged and prepared to vote in the midterm elections, because that is one of the strongest ways that we can combat this illegal and unconstitutional administration that is just illegally kidnapping people and sending them to fucking concentration camps in other countries, led by fucking dictators and warlords. It is disgusting. It is terrifying, because if it could happen to them, it could happen to you. There's literally nothing protecting you from ICE. The only thing that's protecting you is your number hasn't come up yet. If they haven't seen you yet, that is the reason why you are safe from ICE. But yeah, and that among a million other reasons why this administration is dangerous and corrupt. The president has a fucking meme coin where people from other nations can give him untraceable billions of dollars, and currently are. And so what is he getting for that money? How much is he going to sell America for to these people? He's fucking us over, man. He is taking money out of our pockets and giving it to fucking rich people and fucking crooks. There are businesses that cheated American citizens who were found guilty and were told, you got to pay these people $5 million for all the fucking shit that you did. And Trump came in and just deleted that payment because they gave him money instead. And say, hey, we'll give you $1 million if you get rid of that $5 million payment for us. And Trump was like, sold. Unfucking believable. And the fact that we are not fucking marching in the street 24/7 because of this shit is just further evidence to me that the media environment has become completely weaponized against the Democratic Party. And all it does is soften criticism against the Republicans and increase criticism against Democrats. People have the wrong idea, man. The Democratic Party is better than people give it credit for, and the Republican Party is worse than people give it credit for. And it is specifically because billionaires have paid to spread those narratives. Alrighty. Master Liberty says, may I get your opinion on Article 1, Section 8, reservation of officers appointments of church rating of the states regarding the militia specifically. To be honest, the object of the question is more about what you think of the National Guard being dual role enlistment in the Army Reserve. Master Liberty, you really got to get in here earlier, man. Number one, that question is way over my head. Number two, I'm really tired because I'm out in about an hour, my man. God damn, man. I'm happy to see you. I'm happy you're here. I just can't answer any of your questions. Peter Griffin Dependent says, how do you feel about the U.S. funding the Mujahideen to stop Soviet revolution in Saudi Arabia? It's complicated, because if you watch the movie, I think it's called Tom Wilson's War with Tom Hanks, Charlie Wilson's War starring Tom Hanks, it kind of tells you about why that was a good thing to do. But it also tells you about how we fucking dropped the ball after that, and that is the reason why people like Osama bin Laden and the Taliban were able to exist. I think it was the Taliban, not Al-Qaeda. I can't remember. It was one of those two. So yeah, it's complicated. If we had followed through, if we had finished, it would have been a net positive. But yeah, it's complicated. All right. Have you seen Charlie Wilson's War? I fucking love that movie. Alrighty. John Luke said, did the Irish really give all immigrants addresses to ICE? Is that fake news? So John Luke, there has been a ton of reporting about the sort of like information stealing and information consolidation that is happening under the Trump administration. That specifically, I can't tell you about, but I do know that a lot of things like that are happening. Google, the Palantir deal, Google. Agencies are not supposed to be sharing information. It's part of the value of separations of power, so that information from one agency can't be weaponized against you by a different agency. It's right to privacy shit. I'm kind of shooting from the hip here a little bit, but that's the general gist. But yeah, I can't tell you about that specific thing, but I do know that that is what this administration is doing. They're collecting information, they're stealing information, they're consolidating information, and they're going to try to use that against their enemies and the American public in general. 59 says, why doesn't Israel get rid of Netanyahu? I think it has to do with, I don't know, honestly. I don't know what kind of information environment they're living in over there, but Yeah, he's a real piece of shit. I would hope that they would vote against him. Let's see here. Hallie Abbott says, "What happens when the married woman can't vote because of the SAFE Act?" So Hallie, I don't know if that's going to pass because we need 60 votes in the Senate unless they get rid of the filibuster, and I don't know if the Republican Party is going to keep the filibuster. Like, it doesn't seem like the kind of thing. They really don't give a shit about norms or laws or anything. So, you know, adhering to the filibuster doesn't really seem like something that would really hold them back necessarily. But at the same time, they haven't got rid of it yet. So, I'm not really sure. But yeah, if it does pass, then they will achieve their dream of making it harder for women to vote. And so we are going to have to work harder to get people the documents that they need and to do the voter outreach and mobilization and organizing to make sure that we undo the damage of that bill. It's all the same shit, guys. It's just we got to do the work. That is the end results of all of this stuff. Carlito says, "I'm running for political office." I'm glad that you're running for political office. Donald Trump 420, Texas on people who make less than 150K a year. That is accurate. Mike says, "Combat veterans for Trump." That is not a question, so you are out of here. Charlie Wilson's War. That book is a good read. That illuminates the situation. Ooh, I haven't read the book. I only watched the movie. John Luke says, "Is anyone trying to keep gerrymandering in check?" The Democrats are. They tried to pass a bill making partisan gerrymandering illegal, but they did not have enough votes for it because 0 Republicans would vote for it. 0 Republicans would vote for a bill to make partisan gerrymandering illegal because they know that they don't win elections without partisan gerrymandering. They know that they benefit more from partisan gerrymandering than Democrats do, even though Democrats do it a little bit. So yeah, if you want elections to be fair, then you got to vote for Democrats, y'all, because Democrats are the only ones trying to get the money out of politics, trying to make elections actually more fair and equal, so that they don't fucking end up with 30% of the seats, even though they got 60% of the votes in certain states, et cetera, et cetera. All right, everybody, I really appreciate y'all being here. Thank you all for the questions, for the likes, for the shares, for the gifts. My regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. You can check out my schedule and all my good shit on my website, jaredberenstein.com. That is where you can message me. That is where you can join my Patreon or buy things from my store. And you can always subscribe and send gifts on the various social media channels. I appreciate any support that you can give me. You can, send money and shit like that, but you don't have to. I recognize that we are all living through a cost of living crisis, suffering through it. If you have any questions that I was not able to get to, DMs are open. Email me through my website. And yeah, just my heartfelt plea that you all do the work out there, because if we all do the work, then we get out of this. But if we don't do the work, if we just sit around and hope that somebody comes and saves us, then we're fucked. Then this country just continues its rapid decline into authoritarianism. And then at that point, no one is safe, and it's really terrifying. And I would hope that that fear would activate people to actually get the work done. And if you want to know what the work is, check out my Discord. I have got a thread pinned with a lot of really great suggestions for what the work is that you have to do. And you don't have to do it all. You can just pick the things that you want to do, And if you are a, single mother of 5, or you only got 3 limbs, you don't get to do as much as a 19-year-old who's got a fucking lot of gas in the tank. I'm 46. I don't have a lot of gas in the tank, so I got a lot of sympathy for people who can't do as much. But if you just do what you can, and then we'll hope that the 18-year-olds do their work as well. All right, everybody. I will see you tomorrow. Same bad time, same bad channel. Thanks again for being here. Do the work and be good to yourself, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, 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 bye-bye. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye.